Today we are lucky and we have a very special guest, boxing superstar Tszyu. Tim comes from boxing royalty. His father is the legendary Tszyu and his brother Nikita is also making a name for himself in the sport. Tim, thank you so much for being on the podcast today, mate.
No, thanks for having me.
Tim, you are actually the only person I know outside of my brothers who has a world champion as a dad. So I'm very much looking forward to this conversation today. Often in social settings, I get introduced as Lester's son. Yeah. I don't even know if people say my name or not. I'm sure that was the same for you growing up as well. What was it like having Costa as a dad growing up in school?
Yeah, as you would know, everyone growing up thinks their father is a superhero to them. But real life, my dad was the superhero character in front of me. And growing up, watching that in front of me and how he did things with life sort of unfolded to the way I am today.
Absolutely. And obviously that was a positive impact. Do you think there was any negative impact or anything that you viewed negative as a kid having a dad that was a superstar?
Look, it was, I think, a bit more attention as usual. That type of life is different to the ordinary person, I'd say. But it also gave us a lot of discipline in life and a lot of life lessons. To the way my dad is now, he's completely different to the superhero he was back in the days when he was growing up when I was growing up. So I see the positives and I just take it all in. Absolutely.
And was he pretty strict on you guys growing up and ensure that you guys were disciplined?
I think he was very, very strong in a certain way. Like I wouldn't say we would have the discipline of getting smacked or that type of stuff. We would know just not to do stuff. And just watching him and how he approached life, I guess these lessons are in me to this very day.
And kids naturally like to push the boundaries a little bit. Were you pretty well behaved as a kid, or did you get into a bit of trouble?
I was well behaved. My brother, on the other hand, he's the troublemaker.
Okay.
Yeah, he's the troublemaker. But yeah, I guess growing up with a brother, cousins in the household, there was a lot of punch-ons, but that's just part of growing up.
Absolutely. And did you find like your dad's parenting style changed from you as opposed to Nikita, or did you like treat both you guys the same?
I think me and my brother were similar, very similar. My brother and sister in Russia now, for example, post my dad's career, it's a completely different scenario. Like, they're running around, being loud. And I remember back in the days, it was like, nah, this was not allowed to happen. It wasn't part of we weren't allowed to do certain stuff. Like, I remember as kids, crying from pain was just like not tolerated at all. You could always sort of keep your emotions in and be strong. Like, if you got a little cut, for example, as a young kid, you have to stay strong and just look at it and push it away.
Yep. And do you find your dad's gotten a little bit softer as the years have gone on? I have a similar experience. Like, my dad was really easygoing with us. Like, he only really had a chat with us if we were doing something really bad. My mum, on the other hand, she was like the actual fighter of the family. You know, even my dad was scared of my mum. And like us, we got belted, man.
Right.
Not from my dad, from my mum. Like, we were terrified of my mum, as lovely as she is, of course. Like, she was so nice, but then like when she hit a certain point, then she'd just like, everyone would just shit themselves. But like her with my littlest brother, so there's 12 years between me and my youngest brother Dempsey, man, he can do whatever he wants. Like, we would tell him, man, like, if we did that at your age, like, we'd get smacked. Have you found a similar experience with your dad?
Same experience, you know, like my little brother and sister in Russia now, they're completely different kids now compared to what me and my brother Nikita went through, you know. I guess with age, I think you get softer, which is good to a certain extent. But yeah, the experiences were good.
Absolutely. And growing up, obviously, you were surrounded by boxing, but it wasn't always your sport of choice. You played soccer as a kid too, is that right?
So I think my family, my parents, try to do everything they could to not put me into this boxing. And I sort of understand, you don't want your kids getting hit. You don't want your kids watching boxing, fighting boxing and doing all that stuff. So I understand. So I started with gymnastics when I was young. Got transitioned into soccer, and I was going all right in soccer. Like I was at a high level. But then being around in the boxing gym since I was a kid, childhood, it sort of just brought me back.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So and what made you decide to ultimately stop soccer and pursue boxing?
I don't like team sports. So the fact that I like to take everything in my own hand, and boxing's one of those sports that there's no one to blame besides yourself, and that's what I like the most about it, and that's what continues me right now.
And do you recall the feeling of having your first fight? Like, were you nervous beforehand?
Yeah. First fight, I remember I was with a kid, fighting against a kid who's 2 feet taller than me. I remember feeling the nerves, real nervous. I think I was 15 years old at the time. I remember going at it and I stopped him in the first round. So it was a great feeling. I remember I was real happy, and my uncle, my coach at the time, who still is my coach, was it was just a real joyful type feeling.
Absolutely. I remember my first fight. Funny enough, I wasn't nervous. I think I was just overconfident. Like, oh, this will be easy. Went in there. It was close. Ended up losing by a point. At that stage in the amateurs, it was like if you land a punch, it's 1 point. And the judge had to press the button at the same time. So I thought I won. Of course, every kid thinks they win, but I probably didn't. And then the second one, I remember like really, really being scared because I actually knew like I had that experience, you know? And I think I fought Harry Garside on my second fight.
No way.
Yeah, and he touched me up on the second fight. I didn't get stopped or anything, but I lost clearly. Then I rematched him. I don't know why I rematched him. I lost so clearly, but then I ended up winning the third one.
Oh, wow.
And I remember the feeling of your first win. It's unmatched. Isn't it? Yeah.
Oh,
what was that feeling like for you? Because obviously you would have been in team sports, and then obviously having your first fight. Was that like a feeling
addictive? It was addictive, and in the amateur days, my first, I think, 8 fights was all stoppages. And in amateurs, you don't really get many stoppages. And I was just blowing everyone out of the window. I was just taking everyone on, and I was just on this rampage. But yeah, that feeling of victory, it's quite unmatched, and it still keeps you going to this day. You know, and I'd highly recommend anyone doing anything in life to experience such a thrill.
Yeah, we might just touch on that for a second. Like, how do you think boxing can impact your everyday person, whether they just train for fitness or for mental health, or if they, decide to just have a fight? They might not want to be fighters, but just to have that experience. Do you think that can impact their life, I guess, in a lot of positive ways?
Yeah, I think the discipline required for boxing and training can impact your life in a very, very positive way. Preparing for a fight is another thing as well. The reason why is that when you prepare for anything, for in boxing, when you prepare, you put everything on the line, and even when you're sore, even when you're tired, you still got to show up each day, and that brings a lot into life because there are on and off days. Everyone's got them, no matter what. But it's getting through those off days that brings you to become a better person, and the bigger the experiences like that you feel in boxing, the more positive it is in life.
Absolutely. And I think for a lot of people, like obviously boxing, you physically, go out there and you put yourself at risk. But I think for most people in life, it's not so much the physical or the financial risk that really stops people. It's the emotional risk of them like, I don't want to go out there and look like an idiot. Or I don't want to like take this opportunity or try something new in case I fail. Then all my friends and family think I'm a dickhead, as an example. Can you talk about...
See, the thing is, there is no failure in trying, And that's why I try and encourage people to start boxing, because even just starting something from doing nothing, that's a successful story already. You know, someone that's gone from overweight, obese to, you know what, I'm gonna actually start this journey. That's already a successful story right there. Everyone's got success written in a different type of their life. You know, if it comes from everything, and everyone's has to find that success. Some are bigger than others, some are smaller than others, but everyone's got it in them, and it's all about finding it and reaching for the stars for themselves. No one should compare each other's lives. Everyone has to be in their own journey and do what makes them happy.
Absolutely, because we have people that we obviously, you know, consult with people over the phone before they come down, especially if they're a little bit nervous.
Yeah.
And a common thing people say, I got to get fit before I go to the gym.
Yeah,
and it's like so counterintuitive, like they're coming to the gym to get fit.
Exactly.
But the reason why they're saying that is because they don't want to be the only person in the class that might not finish the class or might not be able to do a certain exercise. But it's just the lens you look at it and the perspective that you have. Course. The fact that you walk through the door and we know you were shitting yourself beforehand, like that's a massive win.
100%.
You know? And then all them little wins that you stack just lead, 100%. One thing leads to another. You know, and I think regardless of what you're doing in life, as long as you're making progress in anything, professionally, financially, mentally, physically, with your health, you get that fulfillment that makes you more excited. I think as you get excited, more enthusiastic, it gives you energy.
Of course.
You know,
and it's the little wins in life, you know, like, for example, getting up in the morning and saying, you know what, I'm gonna go for a walk. The little wins, like, you know what, I'm not gonna eat this burger, I'm gonna eat something clean. I'm gonna not drink alcohol, I'm gonna drink water. You know, it's the little things like that. But all those little wins, they just stack up to the bigger picture, and you become a different person at the end of the day. And I try to challenge myself all the time, you know. My challenges are maybe a bit more higher demanding. Like, I've got a sore neck right now from running half a marathon that I decided on the spot. But that's my little wins, you know. And I always try add them up, and that for me builds the big win in the end.
And you talk about, obviously, you know, some of your challenges now are more demanding, but obviously they weren't always more demanding. At some point you were a kid that was having their first spar, you were a kid that was having their first fight, and obviously through repetition you got yourself to a point where you are now.
Of course.
Talk to me about, like, for example, we spoke before about the feeling of winning your first fight. The feeling of winning your first fight, was that similar to the feeling of winning your first pro fight or winning your first world title? The reason why I mention that is because, at least, you know, in my life, some of the things that I'd done 5 years ago, that feeling of accomplishing that is just as good as the feeling that I'm at now. For example, opening my third gym compared to my first gym compared to my third gym. Like, the first one meant more to me, if that makes sense, because the first time doing it. And I think kind of once you realize that process, it's like you said, it's just about the little wins. Whether you're going from level 1 to level 2 or level 100 to a level 101, life is more fulfilling when you're making progress. 100%. Whether it's your first day in the gym 100%. Or your 1,000th day in the gym, it doesn't really matter. As long as you're moving forward, there's a reason to live. You know? Have you found a similar experience?
Yeah, I have.
Can you talk about, for example, winning your first fight as opposed to winning your first world title? For example?
Look, like, I try see the differences in my whole phase of my career, in my professional career, and I'd say the best moment was probably my first fight. You know, my first professional debut. Small 200 people type arena, not arena, it was like a hall. But I had my family, my friends. I had a tough fight as well against a tough opponent at the time, where I was fresh to the sport, freshly introduced. But for me, it was a big win because I went from doing nothing in boxing. Like, I had a little break. I went from going to uni, trying to live an ordinary type life because I was influenced, to no, I want to be back in the boxing gym, to being a trainer, to then feeling the love back to the sport, to then taking the step to, you know what, I'm going to actually turn professional. And that was a big step for me. And that was my first feeling of that step. And that was the biggest step in my career. and still to this day, probably the best feeling. Like I've gone to stadium fights where I've been in front of tens of thousands of people, where I go on the top of the rope where you knock your opponent out in 3 rounds and everyone's cheering your name, the whole crowd with you, to Las Vegas, even the downfall, but living a childhood type dream. But still, I would say to this day, my very first professional fight, the very first win, is what makes everything more special.
And what was the early stages of your career like? I think some people might have the perception, because your dad's a world champion, it was easy for you, or you had more opportunities. Knowing from my own personal experience, I've turned pro as well. I had 3 pro fights, but it wasn't always the case. Talk to us about the early stages of your career, and I guess some of the things that you had to do to hustle to be able to actually have that opportunity.
Well, I don't really tell many people actually this, but at the time I was running a boxing gym. We didn't have many members. My uncle used to be the coach there, and he sort of said, I don't want it anymore. He went into gyprocking, so I had to sort of be able to take care of the gym. I was just trying to pay the rent, in all honesty. I was lagging behind rent all the time. At the same time, I met my partner, my missus. So that was a bit of a struggle, juggling my boxing career, which just started, to managing the boxing gym, to having a missus as well that you have to look after, plus living out of home for the first time. So it was hard at first, but I just saw the big goal, and I created little goals, and I just stayed consistent, and I just wanted to go from fight to fight to fight to fight, while doing personal trainings, of course, like any young fighter these days, what they do, to be able to pay the rent. I used to just get small little salaries from my fights to pay the rent for the gym and be able to push through like that. But yeah, I just kept seeing the bigger picture, and I kept visualizing and just hustling my way through it all. And then at the time, I think Australian boxing, we didn't have no platform. There was no such thing as like fighting on Fox Sports and all of that stuff. So you could sort of have to go from show to show, and it was like fought in Sylvania to Townsville to Brisbane to Sydney to Melbourne, and we were just going everywhere in Australia. I guess the opportunities sort of came a bit more later with Fox Sports and No Limit when I signed with them, and that's when I went full pro. But that was like 3 years into my career, and the first time when I fought Joel Camilleri, that's when I went full pro, and I had someone else managing the gym, Khalil, who was a good friend of mine, and that's where it all started for me.
And in them kind of 3 to 4 years where you're hustling, you're probably not making, a lot of money, or just enough to support yourself.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and people don't realise. They think, you're a pro fighter, then you must be rich, or your dad's a world champion. You must have had it, That's definitely the perception people had of me. Like, man, I'm just hustling to get a sponsor, get $500 there, just to stay afloat. Are there any moments or any days during that period where you questioned if boxing was the right path for you?
Of course, every day. Every day you question it. And that's just normal. But the biggest win was you question, but you get through and you keep moving on. And that's why I recommend a lot of people to start boxing or to start something and just push through, even if you're questioning it. Even to this day, even after my losses, there's always question, but you just got to push through.
Now, I'm glad you shared that, Tim, because people we often idolise, you might just see them in interviews or see them at fights, and they almost look like superhuman.
Yeah.
You don't realise that they go through the same struggles and the same doubts as the everyday person, more or less.
Course.
I remember hearing an interview of Mayweather, and he was talking to Steve Harvey, and he's like, you know, some days I'd go to the gym and like I'd get an ass whooping, or I'd have like really, really tough rounds, and I'd go back and question like, man, do I really want to do this shit?
Yeah.
And that's like one of the greatest fighters of all time. If he's having them doubts, like it's normal for anyone else to have them doubts, you know? And I think it like makes that type of person more relatable when they are a little bit more open and vulnerable of what they go through. But the difference is, unlike a lot of people, they keep persevering and they keep pushing through, which is obviously what you mentioned. What do you tell yourself to keep pushing through on the days where you're like, man, I don't know if I want to continue?
The big picture and visualization. Envision yourself and set yourself certain goals. And just keep reaching for them. But make sure the goals are always unattainable. You know, once you've got to one, go to the next, and go to the next, and go to the next. Even if it feels like shit, just push through. That's the consistency, big thing.
And at what point, you mentioned the Joel Camilleri fight, did you decide, you know what, like I've done this for a few years, like now I'm going all in. What kind of made you think that way?
I think it was more a little bit of the financial freedom I was able to. I had a few sponsors come on board. I had a platform to fight under. I had a salary, a wage to be able to have, and that sort of changed it all for me. But I'm so glad I went through those other years of not going through all that and not being I'd say I was a full-time boxer, but there was a lot of other distractions, of course. That's what made me to who I am today. And I'm glad I got to experience all of that. Because there's a wonderful quote saying, to become a millionaire, you have to become a certain person that you're not. And that's exactly how I see it. To become a world champion, there is no easy road. There's no such thing. And in anything in life, there's no such thing as an easy road. You just gotta embrace hard stuff, and you just gotta take it with both hands.
Yeah. And you touched on it there, where it's more so about accomplishing the goal and what it does for you as a person, as opposed to the goal itself, if that makes sense. Yeah. It's like, okay, for example, you said, you know, $1 million, everyone loves $1 million, but it's not so much about the $1 million, because eventually you get used to it. Yeah. It's about the person you had to become to be, to make $1 million. And it's about, all right, now it's 10 million. It's not so much about the 10 million, it's about the trials and tribulations you have to overcome and what it does for your character, more or less. And I think if you're always challenging yourself in a positive way, it's healthy. You know, I think like if you're too comfortable and you're not challenging yourself, you can quite easily go down a spiral,
100%.
Get too comfortable. Have you had, I guess, any experiences like that yourself, or how have you been able to combat that? Because obviously people may look at you, you've accomplished a lot in the sport, like you might be able to retire and live comfortably for the rest of your life, you know, but you've chosen not to do that.
See, I don't think that.
Yeah.
See, I don't think that, because my aspirations are so high, I don't think that. And yeah, I would say I went through a hole at one stage when I finished school, when I had my injury. I was in a bit of a hole. I didn't know what I was going to do. I had family saying this in one ear, family saying this in one ear. Young kid back then, and I didn't know what to do, and started getting a bit fatter. Started doing not what I was supposed to be doing, and living a life that I didn't grow up with. Got myself out of the hole. I just said, you know what, I'm going to change. And I think it was a New Year's resolution. I sat there and I said, that's it. It's going to be a big change. You know, I usually don't believe in New Year's resolutions, but for me, it changed a lot, and it happened all in one day. And it happened through daily habits, such as getting up in the morning, drinking water first thing in the morning, eating clean, getting up for training, challenging yourself, saying that you're going to do a certain task and doing it, and you just become a different person from that. And I got to experience that, and what a feeling it was.
And it really is the basics that help accomplish results, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like obviously yourself being the decorated fighter that you are and having all the experience, what you mentioned, someone that wants to change their life physically, everyone can do that. Everyone can start drinking water. Everyone can start, waking up a bit early or setting themselves a task and actually doing it.
Just one thing, even like just going to bed at a certain time, instead of procrastinating, just do it. Like these days, I did this thing where on the iPhone, when you're on social media, you can go through hours and hours and hours and hours. I did this thing where when I went to America last year, I said, I'm not going to go on social media at all. So I had 15 minutes screen time a day for 3 months. Just a little challenge I did to myself. And I did it twice last year, and it was an unbelievable feeling, and it's the little challenges like that. It's got nothing to do with boxing as well, but boxing's taught me how to create these little challenges and aspects of life to grow as a person.
And I think equally, it's not so much about what you're doing, it's also about what you're not doing. Yeah. And like you said, not going on social media or not binging Netflix. If it's 10 o'clock, you start an episode, chances are you're not going to bed till 12:1, you know, as an example. How important do you think it is for your everyday person to stay focused and try to limit distractions in their life?
Distractions come at all times. I feel it all the time as well myself. But distractions as in what? Sometimes good distractions are good, sometimes bad, as in staying away from some certain people or knowing that you have to get up at a certain time and staying up, life's all about discipline, and to every ordinary person, everyone needs a bit of structure in life. You need structure, you also need to have some non-structure life. Like for example, on weekends, I like to not have a timetable. During the weekdays, I'm all about timetable. During weekends, I don't want anything planned. And when I have something planned, I usually get the shits, Everyone's got their own little routine that they have to go through, and everyone's just got to find it.
Yep. No, absolutely. And you've had an incredible career, Tim, and it's only the beginning. Obviously, recently you faced, some adversity your last few fights where things didn't go to plan. My dad told me when he won his world title, there was cars of people following him back to his house. There was people in the streets all hours of the night celebrating with him. And when he lost his world title, it was him, his dad, and his brother at a pizza shop in Sunshine. Obviously, going through that process and I guess experiencing that yourself, has there been any lessons you've learned since those fights or things that have surprised you outside the ring, and has it affected the way that you look at life?
To a certain extent, I know who the real ones are. There's a small majority of people. I see the positives in it, like take it on the chin and move on, just live in the present, and I try not look back at the losses and say, it was a miserable time. It was a good time, I'm doing what I love to do with the people I love, and that's all that matters. And there's good even in bad situations. You gotta find the good.
Absolutely, and I think that's really powerful for the people listening to hear that, because it is only once time has passed and you look back, you think, oh well, that had to happen for me to go in this direction or for me to think that way.
Yeah.
For those that might be going through a dark place right now, or they had losses, in their life, respectively to what they're going through, regardless whether it's professionally or personally, what advice would you give them to push through?
You know what, if you think too much about your future, you're going to create anxiety. If you think too much about your past, you're going to create depression. So just live in the moment. Live in the moment. And it's easier said than done, but create little tasks like living in the moment. For example, go in the shower and actually feel the shower, feel the water running down. Have a look what's actually in the shower. I bet you everyone just goes in the shower straight away. But if you actually spend 5 minutes to actually enjoy your shower and look and feel and hear the noises and feel the water running down and the different temperatures, change the temperatures all the time, it's actually a quite cool experience, you know, and going for a walk, feel all your senses, you know, and when you start creating and living in the present, you get to actually enjoy life a little bit more, and you get more out of life. So that's the thing I'd recommend, just live in the present.
Absolutely. And I think like often we're trained, if there's a positive emotion, that's good. If there's maybe more of a negative or uncomfortable emotion, that's bad. But like you're saying, when you have more of a neutral perspective, you realize that there's pros and cons to both.
Yeah.
So just because you might be feeling whatever, a little bit down, or you might be feeling, not pleased with yourself, that's actually like sometimes a good thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes you looking in the mirror and being unhappy with yourself is the reason why you know what, fuck it, tomorrow I'm going to the gym.
Exactly
so like
right.
Really, was that a bad emotion? Like you needed to feel that at that time in order to take action. Because if you look in the mirror and let's say you were unhealthy, but you weren't unpleased with yourself, chances are you're going to continue to be unhealthy. And I think, like you said, living in the moment, having that neutral perspective where it's neither good or bad, it just is, but you can learn from every situation and every emotion.
Yeah, 100%, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you move into the next phase of your career, Tim, what are you looking forward to the most?
Looking forward to the most? Experiences, and chasing for the stars again. Like, I've always envisioned being with the biggest and best badasses fighters all around the world, and fighting against them, and being on that stage, like fighting at the T-Mobile Arena. That was a childhood dream of mine, to be able to be the main event there and feel that. It was an honor. It's like, that's where I want to get back to, and I haven't left. I never left. We're just doing a little reset, but we're coming back with bigger things, and that's exactly where I want to be.
Is your mindset any different going into this fight?
Yeah, redemption. Yeah, it's more like a redemption story now, and take things back to the old school ways with my old school people that I see.
Do you think that redemption mindset has potentially motivated you in a different way? I guess for most of your career, people thought, every fight Tim's in, he's going to win, or he might be a favourite in that fight, and obviously now you face a little bit of adversity. There's probably some people looking at you as an underdog, in certain fights, or maybe even yourself to a certain degree, where of course there's always pressure to win, but now, obviously you've been through what you've been through. Do you find that motivating, for yourself?
Yeah, 100%. And for me, like, some people buckle under pressure. Pressure threatens them. They get scared, shaky hands. I embrace it. And I feel it and I love it. And I feel like it's needed in life. There's no such thing as the success that I want to reach. There's no compromise in the fact that there's going to be pressure. There's going to be all of this type of stuff. So you just got to embrace it and feel it and take it with both hands.
Definitely. And I remember, again, going back to when some people feel negative emotion, they think it's bad straight away. Obviously, pressure and nerves, like it's the most crippling feeling in the world. And obviously, it's a skill set to be able to deal with that. And just like the way you might feel going into a world title fight, someone might feel that exact same way, like that emotion at the same level, just kind of walking through the door.
You know what, man? The day before my wedding, I'm sitting there on my bed thinking, this feels like a world title fight. I'm like, why do I have nerves? I'm getting married. Why do I have nerves? So anyone that's ever gotten married, imagine I felt that same feeling that everyone feels when they get married, as if it's a fight, you know? Same nerves, same butterflies in your stomach, same exact feeling. But I felt more in control of my fight rather than less in control of getting married. So it's just like, what's gonna happen, you know? And that's a little comparison I can say, you know? World title and a wedding, from the ordinary person to fighting for a world title. Similar.
And it's just managing them emotions, isn't it? Like, regardless of what situation you're in life, and obviously, regardless of how you feel, you want to put your best foot forward. You know, you don't want to feel them emotions and then, not that anyone makes a dickhead of themselves, but obviously you want to put your best foot forward. So once you leave that situation, you could be proud, you know, with your effort. Yeah. And I think just understanding that it's normal. Yeah. That's like one thing my dad taught us, because like before a fight, you know, me and my brothers would be shitting ourselves. Yeah. He's like, mate, if you weren't nervous, I'd be worried. Yeah, like, the fact that you're nervous, you're going to be a little bit sharper, you're going to be a bit more alert. It's like if you're ready to have a sleep, or, you know, you weren't nervous, you're like, mate, chances are you're going to go out there and probably get hurt. You know, and then like over time, you don't really like realize that as a kid. You're like, I'm nervous, I wish I wasn't feeling nervous. But I think as you get older and mature, it's like, oh no, this is like what's meant to happen. And it puts your mind at ease a little bit.
Of course. And I remember my last fight, I didn't feel nervous. And I thought something's wrong with me. I felt like the Hulk, but I felt like something was off. And you need to have that feeling. It's only natural.
Yeah, and I think, you know, people listening to this, like, usually we want to accomplish something, especially the unknown. I feel like the fear of the unknown is usually like the strongest fear of all, because you think, oh, what if this goes wrong? What if that happens? Or again, I'll just make the example of someone, you know, walking into one of our gyms. What if we get judged? Or what if I look like an idiot? Yeah. But when you actually do it, you realize like all the things that you're worried about were in fact reality, you know?
A little thing was like, you worry about, like when you're sparring, the worry and the scare of actually getting hit opposed to actually getting hit is two completely different things. When you do get hit with a shot in sparring, which isn't that bad, it's not that bad. But the fear of getting hit with a certain shot is bad before sparring. So that's the comparison I can make, is reality and expectation is two completely different things.
Definitely. There's a good acronym for fear, which is like false expectation appearing real. Yeah. And I think if you let that rule your life, you're scared to do anything.
Of course.
You know, you're scared to walk out. You might, you know, get killed in the car, or you know what I mean? So I think you do have to have that element of, if you are feeling nervous, understand, yep, this is the situation.
It's a good feeling.
100% is necessary for me to, once I do it, then the feeling you have after is almost the polar opposite. You feel proud of yourself. You're rapt that you went down and did that thing that you were scared before, but now you've actually done it. And if you can keep that process on a loop, usually the quality of your life gets better and better.
For sure. It's the little wins.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned, Tim, you recently got married to your wife, Alex, who is here with us today. She is a huge supporter of yours and obviously has been by your side through thick and thin. How important has it been to have that stability at home?
Oh, very important, very important. Someone that understands you, knows what you're going through, someone that questions everything, and someone that just puts you first in front of everything else. You know, it's a blessing and a big support. And of course, to do what I do, you got to understand that it's not easy. You know, being away from home and going through the stuff that you have to go through, and there's demons, of course. And I'm very blessed to have it.
And you obviously got a lot going on at the moment, but are kids on the cards anytime soon?
Oh, hopefully. I think I would love to have a kid. I used to never be like wanting to have a kid, but I think we're at the stage now that it would be a blessing for sure.
And would you like to have a small family, bigger family? Do you have any thoughts around that? See how you go?
3.
3, yeah, nice. Yeah, boys, girls. Like I know, obviously, as parents, you shouldn't have a preference.
Girls.
No, interesting. Yeah.
Maybe one boy.
Okay. Yeah. I feel like men would have like a better relationship with a daughter than like you would. So not better, but like a more loving relationship. And then on the flip side, like obviously, daughters with their mums sometimes can be a little bit fiery, but with their dads, like they melt, It's interesting you say that.
The age of, let's say, when they get to teenagers would be scary.
It would be.
then you become protective.
Absolutely, 100%. Obviously, when it's all said and done, mate, your kids would be, one of the few people in the world who can say that their dad and their granddad was a world champion, which I think is incredible. If, let's say whether your daughters or your sons, want to box, is that something that you would encourage, or do you think you'd be a bit hesitant?
Nah, I'd be a bit hesitant, I'll be honest with you. Daughter, I'd put her straight into tennis. The amount of money they make for not getting hit in the face, that's a good offer, But I think the disciplines of boxing will definitely is very helpful for kids. So I would put my kids through boxing. Would I want them to compete? Personally, not. But as my parents allowed me to do whatever I sort of wanted to do with my life, I'd be the same supportive parent.
When it's all said and done, and you've had a great career and great life, how would you like to be remembered?
Do I want to be remembered? That's a good question, I don't know, like... good person, that's it. Simple.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I've got an interesting question for you. If you could talk to your 80-year-old self right now, what advice do you think 80-year-old Tim would give to you at this present moment?
Don't give up. As my dad always says, don't give up. That's the 3 words. It's always repeated for me.
Tim, thank you very much for your time, my friend.
Worries.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah.
Legend.
No, thanks.
Awesome.